Let's now look into internal narratives. What happens to stories within a company? The company's vision, change management sometimes. We are going to understand how storytelling works inside an organization, not in an advertising, not in films, but in business presentations, leadership communications, and internal change management. Stories are extremely important for us. Many leaders believe storytelling is only for marketing, but that is not true, because storytelling is where we do three critical things even within an organization. We explain direction, we reduce the fear of change, we align people and teams. Data will always inform employees, but a story convinces the employees or the human mind, meaning it can motivate the employees. Let us think of a company, any company's message that you can remember. Why do you remember that message? If you can call it out, but I can remember multiple messages in an organization. The question is, what is this internal narrative or the internal story that happens in major organizations? An internal narrative is a structured story leaders tell their employees about. They could tell about where are they standing in the market currently. They may also tell about why a change is needed. If a change is needed, then where are they going forward to? And what is the role of the employee in that? Without a story, a change feels very forced. But with a story and a narrative, change feels purposeful. Internal storytelling is not drama. It is clarity with purpose and emotion. When we do storytelling in business presentations, what are we actually trying to do? We are trying to make the strategy understandable to one and all. Business presentations often fail because they show charts without any journey. A story structure can improve the understanding of multiple number of employees. We need to present the past state of the organization, the current presentation of the organization, and where will that turning point come? And if the turning point is accepted, then what is the future state of the organization? And to reach there, what are the action steps that we need to take? As I had told you in my earlier video, Microsoft cultural reset narrative is one of the most beautiful examples that the world has seen. Satya Nadella becomes the CEO. Microsoft needs a cultural change. Instead of only presenting strategy slides, he repeatedly told a story about moving from a know-it culture to a learn-it-all culture. This is the narrative shift, the identity change which was required within Microsoft, and a story was being told. It was a very simple message, a repeatable story. This story could have been taken to any department, and there was a behavioral change which was observed by the whole world within Microsoft and with its image which came out into the market. Presentation story then is culture translation. I am talking about business presentation stories, right? And what we say in a business presentation story is strategy becomes memorable when it is framed as an identity story. Identity stories are told by leadership councils in leadership communications. Why? Because they want to build belief and emotional alignment of the numbers of employees working with them or under them. Leadership stories are not product stories. They are meaningful stories for the employees. What do they answer? They answer, why is this story so important right now? Why is it being told to us right now? See, remember, the human brain is looking for a logic, and that logic needs to hit the right target amongst the employees. Thereby, a story is being told by the leadership council. One more most beautiful example which the world knows is that of Think Different, the internal leadership narrative by Apple. When Apple repositioned itself in the late 1990s, the Think Different campaign was not just an external advertising. It was also an internal leadership story about creativity, about being rebel, about creating innovation identity. Think Different, internal communication told employees who they are supposed to be. What should the employees think about themselves and how should they perform? It was just not an external campaign. It flowed down into the entire organization.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Internal narrative defines employee identity, clear and crystal. So the leadership story formula revolves around using these following points. As usual, you need an original story. You need a moment of struggle when you see that the organization is struggling. Go back to taking value decisions. But taking that value decision also must ensure what the future promises for the organization. What is to be avoided definitely is corporate jargonish language or over complex slides which shows charts as well as data as well as human beings. And also not to have emotionless announcements. Empathy is the most required emotion while running an organization. Storytelling, how is it used when there is a change happening in the management? That's the most sensitive time. Why is storytelling used? Because they want to reduce the resistance of the employees. People actually do not resist change. They resist unclear change. Why is the change happening? So when told through a story, it reduces uncertainty by giving a clear structure to what is the change coming about. The change story structure has to talk about the current reality of the organization. What is the problem that the organization is facing and what is the risk of not changing? If change, then what is the new vision? What is the role of the employees throughout? And this buys the trust of the employees. And that's exactly what the Leadership Council does while doing a change management. Remember Netflix shift to streaming? I hope many of you know Netflix was only doing DVD rental at a point of time. But then the leadership understood streaming was the future. And through a clear transformation story which built in convenience, future behavior of customers, the technology readiness which was coming in, they framed a beautiful change as an inevitable evolution of Netflix itself, not a random shift. Employees understood the direction because the story was consistent. The story, the change story must be explained that it is inevitable, that a change is required. But along with it, what is the benefit for the employees also need to be told. Today, Netflix is probably one of the largest streaming organizations of the world. And it is a global phenomenon, right? And change was done beautifully. One more example, IBM transformation narratives under Lou Gerstner. IBM's turnaround involved internal narrative reframing. IBM was known to be a hardware seller. From there, they have become a solutions company today. And it is one of in the top. The leadership repeatedly communicated customer solution stories internally first. The narrative reframing supported the business model change. IBM moved on from being just an hardware seller to a software enhancer. And Gerstner wrote a beautiful book saying, elephants can't dance. Who says elephants can't dance? Remember, IBM is one of the huge companies that the world has seen. Thereby, who says an elephant can't dance? There's a metaphor there. You have to understand the metaphor to understand leadership talk during change management. Internal narrative techniques which leaders generally use are to have the technique of before and after, show them the contrast, show the old way versus the new way. For example, earlier we used to measure the output, the productivity of a company, but now we shall measure the customer impact. That's a technique. We are not looking only into productivity, but we are trying to understand how is the customer getting impacted by our work. We can also use employee hero stories, share internal success stories. There are so many people who work hard to bring success to an organization. Find them out, create a short story around them. They are real people with specific behavior. So thereby, that person becomes an ideal for others to follow within an organization. There is one more technique, the future snapshot story. That means, is the future uncertain? No, the future is certain. So let's talk about the future. Describe one day in the future after the change succeeds. So you have brought in a change management, it has succeeded, so what can happen tomorrow? For example, imagine a client walking in and getting a service in under 3 minutes. Now that's making change visible. We are seeing this in the service sector of where e-portals are today delivering things to us within 10 minutes. Change is visible. Technique number 4 is to be very transparent about the struggle that the organization is going through. Leaders can admit the difficulty that they're going through. And this immediately builds a lot of credibility. Leadership styles widely studied in transformation communication tells that vulnerability of the leadership is one of the most endearing, acceptable change methodologies that employees buy in very easily. And once they buy in, they agree for the change management to happen and they fall in line along with the leadership council and the new change movement that is coming around. So vulnerability definitely, agreeing definitely, transparency definitely works well when we are calling in for an internal communication for a change management. There are some exercises which I'll give to you. You can go ahead and do them so that you can understand how to write an internal change story. So I'll give this out to you. You can do it. Before I close, I would like to remind you once again, business presentations explain. Leadership stories align everybody in the organization. Change stories mobilize. Internal storytelling is not optional in today's modern organizations. It is a leadership capability. When people start understanding the story of an organization, they support the strategy and work along to make the organization a success.